and then we'll get started. Okay. 12:03, let's get started because you may have questions at the end. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you today for joining. I am happy today to continue the conversation on preparing for this hiring event. I know I sent an email out yesterday saying we have the list of employers and the jobs that they've sent us ready. We are about to send that today. Someone's working on that sheet, so it will be with you today. Just make sure your buttons are muted. Your mic buttons are muted for now, and then turn them on later on. All right, so today we're chatting about cover letters. And like many of you, this is actually my least favorite part of the job application, mostly because I think it's a huge task compared to creating a resume or a CV, and mostly because I have never been sure how to write it or what to include in it. And I'm sure many of you can resonate. So since applying for many positions and actually helping PhD students and postdocs and doctoral students with their resumes, kind of picked out a few tips and tricks, and I'd like to share that with you all today. And it's essentially storytelling piece through the cover letters, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So usually when people register for the cover letter talks, there's a lot of questions that I've submitted. So I have designed the rest of the talk by grouping together some of the questions, and the presentation sort of answers those questions as we go along, as I did the resume as well. So some of the questions that folks ask are, how do I balance brevity with impact? How is it different from the resume? Is the cover letter dead? You know, these big topics you'll find on forums. I just had an argument the other day with somebody about the cover letter being dead, and we went back and forth, this friendly argument about whether one should include it or not. So we'll talk about all that as well. If you're looking for more specific information about cover letters as it pertains to teaching intensive positions and lecturer positions, there is an upcoming session specifically that has been advertised to your emails offered by the Teaching Academy. So I think you should attend that as well. So if any questions come up, my one eye is on the chat box on my other screen, and otherwise just pop in anytime and just ask a question. Stop me and just ask a question. So if you've come to, again, any of my previous sessions on resumes, or if we've chatted in small groups, this is the same thing you'll hear me say again and again, and I mentioned this last week. When you're applying for a job and you're trying to make an impression in 15 minutes with the recruiter in the beginning, you want to focus on using all opportunities provided to you to tell the employer more about you. They don't know you. They don't know what skills you bring, what value proposition you are bringing to the table. You could, in reality, be the best person for the role, but your future employer does not know that unless we help them connect the dots. So today, I want to be able to just empower you with this knowledge and make it sort of like demystify this process of writing a cover letter and approach it in a very practical way, step by step, that will help you write. If this is your first cover letter, maybe this won't be the most fantastic cover letter, but at least you have the strategies in place to keep working on it. The more and more you write a cover letter to a job. So I'm just gonna, again, my focal point here is strategy. So let's first chat about the value of a cover letter. So like your resume, your cover letter is just one more opportunity to tell your professional story. It is not supposed to be a repeat of your resume bullet points, but rather it's supposed to complement your resume or CV or other application materials. 90% of the time, however, when I do read a cover letter, it's basically the resume being repeated over and over again. It's kind of pointless to be able to have to do that. So think of it as an accompaniment and as a side dish to your main document, that is your resume. There is no reason, and I'll state this again, that your cover letter should restate the bullet points one by one by one in your that you have already in your resume or a CV. Your future employer, whether that's a full-time job or an internship or an academic position, is able to assess also as a byproduct of having written a cover letter, your ability to write and communicate effectively within those documents. So it's actually a communication document. I shouldn't say second bullet point is a God opportunity, it's a good opportunity to communicate directly with the employer. So for the employer, when there are a couple of resumes that look similar for a particular role, let's just say consulting, for example, many of you have fantastic experiences that align well with a consulting role, and there are two equally good resumes, right? Then what the employer is going to do is hark back to the cover letter as a decision-making factor, as a tiebreaker, so to speak, when they're reviewing documents. I'll talk about that a little bit in the next slide. So it's a nifty little narrative. It's an opportunity to present that narrative and to learn a little bit more about you. Now, like a resume, a cover letter doesn't mean an automatic job offer, but it does help us receive that invitation to interview, which is exactly what we want to do. Because once the candidate once I have full confidence in you, reach the interview stage, you're able to portray and convey your amazing skill sets and what you've learned. It's just that part where you're transitioning from applying to getting a call for the interview. That's the hardest part, but obviously not impossible. So one can never predict whether the organization is actually reading the resume or not, the cover letter or not. It depends on the industry. It depends on, like, even in academia, sometimes cover letter is something that they first read, whereas in industry, the resume is something that they might first read. So if a job or an internship specifically is asking for one, don't skip over this step. Many people are tempted to say, well, my resume is going to speak for itself. If it's specifically stating cover letter, attach a cover letter, then of course you have to put one in. Now, is it a good idea to include one when they haven't specified? Here's where the debate is. If they haven't specified, if they say explicitly no cover letter required, as you'll see in one of the jobs that we have uploaded to Handshake. By the way, if you want to get a sneak peek of the jobs that are out there already uploaded, just in Handshake on the search feature under jobs, look for H2P. All the jobs are being uploaded under that sort of tag. They'll all come there. But for you to get an overview, we'll send the sheet this afternoon. So it's always good to include one when the job or internship has also not mentioned anything. Sometimes they have upload additional documents. Write one, because again, I'll say this to drive home this final point. If there are two good resumes, but one resume has a cover letter attached, I'm more inclined, and I did this recently for a role that I was hiring for, I'm more inclined to hark back to the cover letter to get a little bit more information about the candidate, their writing, communication style, or what they bring to the table. So why not go the extra mile, right? So a lot of the times, folks ask, what's the difference between an academic and a non-academic cover letter? And I'll say that there are a few differences. With the academic one, you're a little longer, just as the CV. You can go 1.5 to 2 pages in them. For the non-academic one, mostly like industry, consulting, even nonprofit think tanks, you're looking at a one-pager, and 1 page is good enough. When it comes to the content for your academic cover letters, you are framing aspects of your academic training. That's what you're portraying. Whereas in your industry resume, you might frame aspects of your skills. What are your translational skills? What are your technical skills? You want to frame that as how you might bring those skills to the table. I mentioned this earlier. With an industry job, maybe the cover letter is a second document they read. They prioritize the resume, which is why we're sending all the employers your resumes in this case. Whereas in an academic setting, people tend to spend some time reading it all. So when you do write a one-pager and manage to convey your message poignantly, I think, in my opinion, lies the art of writing a cover letter. It's just strategy. When it comes to general strategy, there are more similarities than massive differences between the two. It's the same concept. You want to showcase a little bit more about who you are and what you bring to the table. So before we get into the structure and the content, which is what most folks are eager to get to, I'd really like to share a few things that you should know before you begin your approach to your cover letter writing. If you came to the resume talk last week, I took the same approach. Things you should know before you get into the mindset of writing. One is, and this should be an obvious point, but it isn't quite that obvious all the time, is that you must use a formal and professional tone in your cover letter. It's not sort of a storytelling, informal tweet or a post, right? So use the professional tone, follow the structure. That's what people are used to reading, the creatures of habit. So you want to be able to write it in a way in which they're used to as well, with variations, and we'll talk about variations later. Second, again, it is not a repeat of your CV resume. If you have listed qualities about you neatly in your resume, and these are diverse qualities, you don't have to repeat that in the cover letter. What it is that you're going to take 2 or 3 experiences from your resume and stories that you'd like to tell and make them your paragraphs in your cover letter. When you write, whether that's a resume, a cover letter, whether that's an article, a paper, an email, a tweet, you have to write with intention. I think there should be a purpose for what we're writing. And in order to be able to write convincingly, you want to focus on writing with intention. So plan to draft a document of ideas, of all the things that you want to showcase, and then plan to cut most of it and all the fluff. What should remain on the piece of paper are short, purposeful, meaningful paragraphs. Everything that distracts you from your message can go, but almost everything that adds value to your narrative as it pertains to the roles that you're applying for can stay. They don't need to know everything about you. It's very tempting to kind of try and make a cover letter sound like a personal statement, but in fact, it is not a personal statement. They only need to know the parts of you that are relevant to the job or internship that you're applying for. So just as you did in your resume, the content and your cover letter should focus on demonstrating your accomplishments with measurable and tangible outcomes. Everything that I'm saying will be demonstrated through examples in a future slide. You want to avoid generic buzzwords and sentences like, I am passionate, a forward thinker, and demonstrate how you might be passionate through examples that you're showcasing. This comes with practice. Again, you may look at a sample cover letter and all they've said is, I'm a great team player, I'm passionate about my role. Everyone who's applying for that role is saying the same exact thing. They're passionate and they're incredibly talented and so on and so forth. You want to be different from the rest. You want to be able to showcase that with solid examples of, and what you're saying, those qualities should come through in your examples. So someone asked me, can I send the same cover letter to multiple positions if the positions are closely related? And I would say for the most part, no. The extra effort of tailoring your cover letter makes a huge difference. But I'm telling you only because I was sending generic cover letters and resumes for every single role and getting incredibly frustrated. But when you take that time to speak the language of the employer and tell them what they want to know and who they want to hire and showcase how you have that, when you take the time and you practice with intention again, it does make a difference. However, say there are 2 consulting roles, right? One is at Guidehouse and one is at Booz Allen Hamilton. Both are consulting roles, both are life science consultants. You might want to portray the chunk of your cover letter and the skills that your examples may remain the same. You might want to showcase how you're a problem solver or how you're a great communicator in both those cover letters. But what will change, and this is why cut, copy, paste is not recommended, what will change is how you're addressing the employer. Why do you want to work for Guidehouse versus why do you want to work for Booz Allen? Each of them have their own different mission and values of their company. So you want to speak to those values. So when you send your applications for this hiring event or beyond for a networking opportunity with maybe the National Gallery of Art or RAND, maybe you want to go that extra mile. I would like for you to sort of start to reframe the approach with which you write. You're no longer writing your resume and the cover letter as a graduate student asking for a job. You are writing your cover letter and resume as a future colleague or a teammate with a specific set of skills and value to offer. And if you were here for the first talk that I gave on identifying your transferable skills, and I'll acknowledge it in this slide as well, I've showcased that each of us brings a set of unique skills and qualities to that job. So the number one thing to do through all these documents is to bring that authenticity and that genuine storytelling aspect of who you are and what you bring to the table into the role. You don't want to just, I don't think one, employers should hire cookie cutter people. They should hire people who first, then the skills. But also you don't want to lose that sense of who you are and what you bring to the table. So I say stick to what you know, what your strengths are, and who you are genuinely as a person, and let that come through in the resume and the cover letter. At this point, I want to just pause for a second and ask if you have any questions. Okay. So now you're getting ready to write a cover letter and apply for a job. I will, ask you a question at this point, and I would like to ask you, if you found a position at Pfizer or Google that you absolutely love and feel like you could do the job, and you're getting ready to write this resume and cover letter for the position, what's the first step in the process? Where could you gather the appropriate information you would need to start putting your material together? Anybody? What's the first step? Where do you start? Research the company. Yeah. Yep. You heard me last time. It always, 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 the clues lie in the job description. And the caveat here is you need a good job description to be able to understand what they're looking for and who they're looking for. Now, in many instances, companies are not providing the exact jobs because they are trying to fit you to the jobs. In that case, you're going to be researching the company, as someone said in the chat, as Lydia said in the chat. You want to be, Meg said in the chat as well, you want to research the company, and we'll come to that in a second. So look at this job description here, right? This was actually the job description for my job. It was so well written. It was detailed. I knew exactly who they're looking for, and I could speak their language. It tells you what are the qualities. The ideal candidate is entrepreneurial, data and outcome driven, comfortable leading programs and interventions with groups. Like, it told me exactly. So I could mirror these qualities in my CV, in my resume, and in my cover letter. So question for you is, what qualities, according to them, not according to you, are important for this role? It starts with the job description. It starts with understanding what a consultant does, or what an engineer does, or what a researcher at RAND does. It starts with understanding the role. Then you're able to effectively communicate how you align well with those roles in your documents. What technical skills are best to highlight? How would I know? Well, it's in the job description. If they say collaborate 4 times, that means they really value collaboration. So maybe one paragraph in your cover letter can be dedicated to collaboration. What soft skills would make an ideal candidate? Once you've dissected and teased apart that position description, do you have complete clarity about the role? That might take a little bit of digging. So now, once you have the job description, you've studied it, you've looked at it, you can start to dissect out aspects of it, right? So they're looking for these skills: writing, laboratory skills, technical skills, I don't know, programming maybe. They're looking for these qualities: collaborative someone, community oriented, someone who has prior commitment to diversity, or in the future has a commitment to diversity. Maybe they want to hire someone like this, someone who's enthusiastic. It'll be featured in the job description. Visionary, leader, who can basically take the organization next level. They've written this down already. So if you follow the red writing across the board, a job is looking for a writer who's community oriented and who has a vision for maybe like a leadership vision for a particular role. So I understood, and I can understand that maybe and perhaps some of my paragraphs in my cover letter should be centered around these themes. Or perhaps there's a role that's technical skills is important, like lab skills. They're looking for someone who can collab with their teammates, and someone who's enthusiastic. This would be a scientist's role in industry, where you might be collaborating with other interdisciplinary scientists. So work backwards from what your understanding of the job and the company and its values are. So extra tip, we mentioned this previously, right? Like, start framing the work done in your PhD in terms of skills, not in terms of the topic of your dissertation. How did you achieve the dissertation? How did you achieve the projects? What skills did you use? For example, if you're an expert in machine learning, um, maybe you're an expert in machine learning before you're an expert in studying neural networks in the cerebellum. Maybe your dissertation is combines machine learning and cerebellum and neural networks, but how you want to lead, which foot do you lead forward with? If the company is looking for a machine learning specialist, then you start and lead with you being a machine learner, not so much about the neural networks of the brain and so on and so forth. You don't want to get into the nitty-gritty technical jargon in your cover letter. Lead from the skills aspect. Next. So researching things and going down rabbit holes is our specialty in this doctoral world. We're good at taking large amounts of information and whittling it down to the main points, right? So same exact approach. Go down the rabbit hole for a minute, not too much, but just a little bit, on researching the company. Let's take, for example, Booz Allen Hamilton. I'm giving you this example because these are steps I took when I was interviewing with Booz Allen, with the same team that's actually coming to hire you guys for PhD level consultants. What I did was I had a call with the executive vice president of the company, and it was supposed to be like an informational call, but I treated it like as if it was a big interview. Was go into the website of Booz Allen Hamilton, and there's so much information there. There's articles, it tells you about their mission, how long they've been around. They tell you on their website they're America's best employer for women. That might align with my values. So when you are thinking of a reason why, what to write in the cover letter as to why you're applying, you can cite, well, Booz Allen Hamilton, it's of great interest to me. I'm applying because it's been America's best employer for women. And you see there, it says learn why. Go check the data out on how they came to the conclusion that they are the best employer for women, and put that in your cover letter. You want to be very specific. You want to show that you've done your research. And then maybe I'm working with Mr. Munoz over here, and maybe he's the team that's coming to hire for the hiring event, or I'm trying to connect with him later. There's a whole profile on Munoz's work at Booz Allen and prior to Booz Allen. What did I learn from his past and what is important to him? So if I'm trying to showcase my expertise in diversity, equity, inclusion, or my interest in working in his team, I might want to read and research, what is his value system, who you're working with, what kind of work do they do, so on and so forth. There are two Booz Allen teams that are coming. One is in AI, health analytics, data science, and one is in life sciences consulting, right? You're going to take two different approaches and two different cover letters for each of those because their focal points are completely different. So in that case, you can just say, I would love to work with you because Booz Allen hires, is the best employer for women. That's not the hook there. The hook is, why do you want to work specifically for the AI team versus why do you want to work specifically for the life science consulting team? So let me know if that kind of makes sense. I'll give you different examples as well. Okay, any questions about this part, researching the company? Okay, we'll move on then. So now we've researched and we've written our resume. It's all done. We've used the same material to even write our resume because we understand what the company values. Now that you have all that information, lay everything out. Okay, and now we begin writing the cover letter and we talk about the content and the layout of the cover letter. So, as I said before, a cover letter can be a one-pager for your non-academic positions, 2 pages max for academic. If it's like a combination of an admin position and you still do a bit of research, it can take the 2-page length limit, as is displayed in this example here. This is an example of someone who works in the Modern Languages Association, and they were writing for a particular job that they currently work at. So as you can see, it's a one-pager, or it's actually 2 pages. It's 3 to 5. You want to write a 3 to 5 paragraph cover letter if you're going for a one-pager. 1-inch margins are fine. You don't want to go less than 11 sized font. If it is an academic position or you're applying to some sort of society with like an academic bend, it's okay to have your school's logo at the top But if you're applying to an industry position or a think tank, there's nothing to do with the academic setting, you don't have to put that logo at all on top. So it can be just your generic Word document. You want to be able to include the full address on the very top of the employer, the organization, and the date at which you're writing the cover letter. And so that's basically if you take a 30,000 view zoomed out sort of look at the cover letter, it should look like this: neatly organized, date, address, paragraphs, and the content is actually the golden ticket here, and the content will be stories that the person has expanded upon from their resume. So first things first, who are you addressing it to? Always try to address it to a real person. Look for the name of the real person. Usually you can find that out by a quick LinkedIn search or through handshake search as well. You could look at the company, or if we are providing that to you, you can ask me and I'll provide that to you if you want to write a specific cover letter for any of these positions. If you are applying for academic positions, maybe it's in a biology department or something, you want to be able to, maybe you can even call the administrator and ask who the head of the hiring committee is. You can go that extra mile. What you want to do is, if you don't have sort of the name of the person, you can always say, dear recruiting representative, dear hiring committee, dear hiring manager. What you don't want to do is, you don't want to say, dear sir, madam, be very generic, or respective sir, madam, or to whom it may concern. That's like the worst of it all. Others are at least you can deal with, but to whom it may concern just is very sort of lack of effort. That's what it demonstrates. And then hello, you don't want to do that. But I read a lot of cover letters with this stuff, so I'm telling you that that's not the stuff that you'd want to put in. So the question is, what if the position is at an academic institution but isn't a traditionally academic job? I'm thinking about higher ed admin types of jobs. Yeah, you can, in that case, this is one you can include your logo. That's okay. It's not a make or break. It just takes a little bit of space. So usually I say just take it off because people have a lot to say. But yeah, you can keep that logo, just as the modern languages example, which I'll share with you later. It's right at the top. You can do narrow margins and put it right at the top. Totally okay. So yeah, so who do you share it with? I mean, who do you address it to? Any of these examples? Okay. Last time when people participated in this hiring event, they reached out, like those who took the effort to write a cover letter, I reached out and asked me, do you know the name of the person coming? And I'll let you know in that case. All right, so content, 3 to 5 paragraphs. And this is so important. These are not distinct paragraphs. These are paragraphs that have a flow to them. Each paragraph leads into the next. There is continuity. It's not 2-3 distinct things. Unless, I'll give you an example of a consulting cover letter in a minute. Unless you're talking about 3 different stories and 3 different skill sets, but still, they all have to tie together. It all has to flow, not something disparate. Examples shall prove what I'm saying. Pick 2 to 3 highlights from your resume that match the needs of the employer and communicate that, which means you might be tempted to tell them all about you and all the skills you bring to the table because the job has like 9 skills listed. Pick the 2 to 3 most relevant that you think are necessary for them to know about you and showcases how you could do that job. If you are writing like an academically focused letter, demonstrate your current and broader, not the nitty-gritty details of your everyday research, like the protein and the lambda, and broader research focus skills and its impact. And the impact part, why do you do what you do? Not what do you do on a daily basis that no one will understand. Keep in mind who's reading these cover letters. Oftentimes it's a recruiter. Very few times it's actually like a PhD person. Also keep in mind the needs of the position. Who are they looking for? And then tell them that how you have that, what they're looking for. Now, you may think that I'm saying that you must always match a job description 100%. No, you can match it 60-65% and still be very qualified for that job. So that's the overview of the content. Next, what's your opening paragraph? There is no set format. Write in a way that's convincing in your own way, which means when you see the templates that I'm about to send you, there are different iterations of an opening sentence. Different people will do it differently, but there are some things you want to cover right in the beginning. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be long-winded and say, talk a lot about like your background. Like I study, I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Hopkins. I studied this, and you're applying to a consulting position. It's irrelevant what the details of your study are and your postdoctoral research and your graduate research was when you're applying to this. Cut the fluff, be direct. Find a style that's comfortable to you. What you want to include or what you could include is as options are who you are, what you do, very briefly, broader sort of impact work, why you're interested in the job. You can mention how you heard about the job, that's fine. You could say something like, suppose one of these jobs, Flagship Pioneering, a company that's coming, wants you to send a resume through us, but also wants you to apply on the Flagship portal, right? In that case, say, I heard about this job through the Hop to the Future event. You can tell them how you heard about it. And then that one line hook, get straight to the point. I think I'm qualified for this job because so and so reasons. I'll show you an example. Some other people include right in the first opening paragraph a referral. They name drop whoever they spoke to the company or whoever referred them for the job. That's completely okay. It's okay to name drop in a cover letter. What you want to avoid is you want to avoid long essay introductions. You don't have to go into your motivations for how you started out as a child, realizing that you really like science, or how you really like poetry or something like that. This is not a personal statement. It's not a diversity statement. It's not a teaching statement. It's a cover letter. It's a skills-focused cover letter. Avoid jargon, technical terms. Remember who reads a cover letter in the first place. Don't assume that the reader knows what crystallography is like how you know it, right? You don't assume that they would actually know what that means. They're just looking at the job description, they're looking at the cover letter and seeing if things match. And of course, this is not what you want to say. I'm a forward-thinking problem solver who is passionate about this role and want to use my varied skills to solve real-life problems. Every single word in that sentence is empty. Everyone is saying it. It doesn't distinguish why you should get the job. To solve real-life problems, what does that mean in the context of their problem? What are the problem the company is trying to solve? And how do your skills that you possess help you solve that problem for them? So examples, this is the fun part, right? Like really breaking it down and making the connections is why is this a good opening cover letter? So this person was writing to BCG, got the job, has moved on many jobs later, but it's one of my favorite cover letters. Very straight, no nonsense, cuts to the fluff. I'm writing to apply for the associate consultant in BCG's Dallas office. Okay. A little bit about themselves. They are a PhD from neuroscience and a postdoc from NIH. And they're currently a postdoctoral researcher from UC San Diego, in brackets, ranked #2 in neuroscience by US News and World Report. He's not even taking the time to, just lay it on softly. He's just straight going to making an impression in the first paragraph. I studied mechanisms of drug addiction. Now, he is not talking about the new, microglia and whatnot of the brain. Very broadly, I studied mechanisms of drug addiction and published 2 first author peer-reviewed articles. One was in Nature Neuroscience. I was selected out of a dozen applicants to work as an analyst at Tech Post Angel. And the reason why he's putting this experience right in the beginning is because that's his only other experience from grad school that relates a little bit to what they do at consulting. So there's intention in why he's talking about the Tech Post Angel in the opening paragraph. These experiences, as well as my previous industry exposure, stoked my interest in consulting. Okay, very short, very brief. Everything is purposely selected and put in there. And then he says, after having spoke with dozens of consultants, I'm interested in the work culture that BCG offers. My conversations with Kevin Pratt and Ramiro Palm, he name drops in the beginning, made a lasting impression. And he name drops a couple of people. I believe that my natural curiosity and creativity make me an ideal candidate for BCG. And guess what? He's not just using empty words of natural curiosity and creativity. In the following paragraphs, he's going to demonstrate how he has that creativity and curiosity. In addition to extensive analytical and scientific experience, which is why he's a valuable candidate, they are looking for someone with analytical and scientific experience. I've had opportunities to develop the following skills that will positively contribute to the work at BCG. And then he's going to, in the next few chunky portions, he's going to portray the specific skills like problem solving, leadership, and tenacity, or whatever BCG looks for in their consultants. He's going to expand upon it by taking 2 to 3 points from his bullet, from his resume, and telling the story around those points. So the next one is an example of someone who applied to the FDA in the last hiring event. And over here, I think they spend a little too much time talking about their current research work. They're applying for a staff fellow biologist position in the new animal drug evaluation division at the FDA. And it's a veterinary job. I can never say that word. So excuse me. It's a job that works with animals, but they spend a lot of time talking about the skin microenvironment and melanoma and premature aging and so on and so forth. It would have been better, because this position was focused on animal models, for them to talk about their use of animal models in their study right away, because all that information about their melanoma and immunotherapy is in their resume. So skip the fluff, get to the point. Okay. And then this other example from the Modern Languages Association, as you can see, I'm often faced with the challenge of giving an engineering example and a humanities example. So just, all this has a lesson in it. So even though it's a humanities example or an engineering or science example, I've showcased different elements. So in this case, with the Modern Languages Association that this person's applying to, they say, I'm applying for this coordinator position. And then they say very quickly, as a fellow in the same organization years ago, I was intrigued. So they're making the connection of how they've had past experience as a fellow. And that immediately to the reader, they're excited that, this person's already been at the Modern Languages Association. Cool. And they go on and talking about what makes them a good fit. See the last line, it says, my deep-seated passion for the humanities and my continuing commitment to career diversity, because that's the role that they were applying for, as well as my own unique professional trajectory, has positioned me well to succeed in this role. Directly tell them why they should be hiring. Okay. So these are iterations of an opening paragraph. You can be as bold and brazen as you want. You can take a more middle of the road approach, but you don't want to spend time just talking about stuff that can be found in your resume. Get straight to the point. And then we're talking about the body of the letter. Once again, there is no set format. Different people, will write it a little bit differently. Again, when deciding, what should I focus on? Which 3 paragraphs should I focus on? Take 2 to 3 examples of your best skill sets that will work for this job, and that can support your ability to be successful in the position, and expand upon that with your stories. Make explicit connections for the reader. Okay. What you want to avoid is the regurgitation of your CV. You want to avoid trying to talk about everything you've ever done in the last 10 years. You want to avoid you talking about skills that have nothing to do with the job. And you just want to showcase those top 3 skills, and that's okay, because your resume is going to do the talking, and this is the compliment. So people ask oftentimes, how do I know what to focus on with skills? And it's in the job description, it's in the company description, it's in the understanding of what you know about the role that you're applying for. So this is the example of the consultant's resume, right? They say during 2007 and 2009, they worked in this company called Great Call. And in that company, they led a team of 25 people to achieve the highest customer retention and sales. And they go on about their little action verbs like led a team, increase sales, they quantify things that I've mentioned that you should do in a resume. Someone asked me, oh my God, look at them saying they promoted twice within 6 months. Why not? Because it's not showing off when it's a fact. They were promoted twice in 6 months. That's a good sell on your resume. So note the action verbs, and then check out their story. So now you get a sense on the resume what they did, right? In their cover letter, they identified that the employer, that's BCG in this case, was looking for leadership as a skill. So they build a story around their experience at Great Call. They say, in my role as operations consultant at a 210 million communication company, I was asked to align the customer service operations of 2 call centers. Although I was given very little supervision in this role, I did this. And then they say, I set up weekly meetings with the director and established a working relationship that exists to this day. Why do you think he has portrayed and explained a working relationship? Because, and that's question is rhetorical, because he is going to be working as a consultant. And a part of a consultant's job is to build working relationships with their clients that are long lasting. So everything is intentional. This is the way they have approached their cover letter in terms of skills. 3 paragraphs focused on problem solving, leadership and tenacity, and effective communication. Now, you may think that when you teach students as a TA, as your in your grad student experience, then that is nothing to be mentioned in a cover letter. It's no big deal. Actually, you can really talk about the impact that you made as a teacher and as a communicator. For example, if you look at this person's effective communications paragraph, it says, I was a teaching assistant in chemistry. I prepared weekly lessons where I taught organic chemistry. And then they tell you the story behind it. They expand upon their resume bullet points. During office hours, I also worked one-on-one with struggling students to help tutor them. 3 of the students hired me personally to tutor them in preparation for MCAT, and they got accepted into medical school. My experience as a teaching assistant taught me to adapt to the needs of various students and personally tailor my communication to their circumstances. And that's important because if you substitute the word students with clients, that's exactly what he would do as a consultant. He would adapt the needs of various clients and personally tailor his communication to their circumstance. So that's why I had mentioned write with intention, show parallel experiences that a person can extrapolate to how you might be as an employee. Another example with the humanities, this one was 2 to 3 pages long. Again, they take one example and they summarize it in their paragraphs with stories. And I'll share this example again in the folder that you all have access to. Hopefully that you still have access to that. But in the humanities writing, which is so amazingly well written, you would see that they say the skills I developed as an undergraduate comparative literature major, especially in close reading of individual texts and observing trends, served me well in the 3 years I spent developing, summarizing, repackaging, and distributing equity and economic research at Morgan Stanley, taking their grad experiences and transferring it to a real world setting and experience that they've had. You have that skill set. It's just finding a way to communicate. And I'll skip over the FDA one in interest of time, but this example will be yet another example that I'll share, but it'll be very apparent when you read it why it's a good cover letter. So just a little bit of an acknowledgement, because this question comes up and self-doubt will creep up as I keep talking about these amazing cover letters. You might be saying, I don't have it, I don't have it. You have it. If you taught students in a class, you led a class, you have communication, leadership skills. If you've attended conferences, maybe that's the paragraph you want to portray because it's communication skills and relationship building skills. If you know languages and you're applying to the foreign services or you're applying to RAND corporation, which wants you to sort of have this worldview look, showcase your language skills, how you learned a language. Maybe you sat down and learned it on Duolingo, like you spent all this time. That's something unique that you did that shows to the employer how amazing you are, how much effort you took, and what initiative you took. So there are stories to be told. Just figure out which stories you need to tell. And then finally, we'll talk about the concluding paragraphs in this last few minutes. Is once you've gotten those chunks of the opening paragraph, 3 to 5 examples, you just need a paragraph to end. It could be very short, could be concluding. You can reiterate your interest and enthusiasm in the role. you want it to flow well. You don't want to just abruptly end. So make sure like there's a lead in to your end. Sum up your strengths, summarize what is it that you bring to the role. Um, write again from a future colleagues. Oh, is someone asking about the SharePoint folder? Yes, yes. I'll send out another reminder this email this afternoon when I send the employer list to you. I'll connect you to that folder. In fact, I think it'll be in the same folder, so I'll share that folder with you. And end on a positive note. Good examples of conclusion can include, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about the position and elaborate on the skills. You don't have to say, please find my resume enclosed. You don't, that used to be relevant when people were mailing in their stuff. In this case, everything's going through an online portal. They can just download it, the combination of documents. Thank you for considering my application. Please do not hesitate to contact me with any additional questions. Or I believe my 3 years of experience in machine learning, specifically working on automated vehicles, will be an excellent match for this job. I welcome the chance to discuss how my qualifications will contribute to your team's success. Thank you for your consideration. What you want to avoid is, thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you in the near future, which is something I saw. Because it's supposed to be near future, but the person did not read through their cover letter and it's just weird. So typos, make sure that you're catching them. All I ask for you is to consider, just words strung together, fancy. This is obviously an exaggeration, but you want to be able to avoid fancy terminologies throughout your cover letter, throughout your job applications. Or really, this is my experience. I've experienced this recently, is just constantly reiterating, how much you want this role. Again, you're a future colleague. You have things to offer. So just offer the skills that you bring. And one of the worst things a seasoned reader of cover letters will pick up is if your cover letter was generic and you're copy pasting it to every single job. Proofread, write, edit, restructure, trim, check for grammatical errors, and make sure that when you look at your resume, and as you look at your cover letter, that there's coherence. And I'll add a third factor to it. Make sure when you go check your LinkedIn page, which they are bound to check, in this event, you might want to upload in the Brazen platform, you're able to link your LinkedIn page. Make sure that all 3 documents are saying the similar things about you. You don't want to find an experience that would be amazing for the job on your LinkedIn, but is not included in your resume. Make sure that there is some consistency across the board. And when we talk about interviews in a future workshop, this consistency will carry on in that interview preparation and that interview roles as well. So in the end, again, let's go back out and zoom out. You have this address, salutation, the opening intro, who and why. You have the body where you're expanding on 2 to 3 key experiences as it's relevant for the role. And then you have the conclusion, and that makes what is a great and effective cover letter. So I think I would have answered sort of most questions, general questions that most people have. How long should it be? What should I focus on? How should I balance my skills? How do I parlay my academic skills to tangible work skills? These are real questions from people. Can I address any gaps on my resume in my cover letter? Yes, absolutely. If you've been ill or you've taken maternity leave for a while, or you were out of the job, graduate school for a while, you want to explain that, cover letter is a good space to do that. And anything else as well. I think you have some questions in the chat box, but I'll answer that now, but I think I've answered most of the questions. Let me know if you have any more. I'm still curious if cover letter is necessary for all disciplines, such as large tech research company. I remember you mentioned last week that the recruiter probably spends less than 1 minute on a resume. It feels contradictory if they spend more time reading a cover letter. Exactly. So the first thing I said was they're going to look at for the tech world, let's just say Tesla, for example. They're going to look at your resume. They're going to spend 6 seconds on it. For the ones that they like, they're not spending 6 seconds. They're going to read further. They spend 6 seconds picking out the ones that they like. Once I've landed on, and this is my process too, once I've landed on a resume I like, I will take my time making sure what I saw in the first 1/3 of the resume is reflected in the rest of the resume. So it's quick enough. I'll spend 10 minutes on it. Now I go through the other resume and I spend 6 seconds, and I really like that one too. It says something different. I have two resumes, I have two candidates that I equally like, but I have one interview that I wanna call one person. I'm gonna go hunt for the cover letter. I'm gonna be like, who submitted a cover letter for this role? And then I'm gonna read the one that the person who submitted a cover letter, and I'm able to make that my tiebreaker decision. My colleague recently told me as they were hiring for a position, they did not even do a first round interview for those who did not submit a cover letter. So to be on the safer side, to err on the side of safety, and to sort of take that extra mile step, you can include a cover letter unless it explicitly says no cover letter required. Now, I'm not saying that always a cover letter is going to get you the job. Guess what? For this job that I applied for, I didn't include a cover letter. I'm lucky I got through with the resume, right? But had it been a close call between two, maybe the person with the cover letter would have gotten the call. My resume seemed to have been strong and very well matched to that job, but still, I took a chance because I wasn't actively looking and I was lazy. I did not send the cover letter, but I got through. I was lucky. So just to increase your chances, my thoughts are go the extra mile. When I showcase the interview chat later on, I'll show you how when I came to the interview, because I did not submit a cover letter, I brought a portfolio, I brought a diagram of my vision, my strategy. I just went that extra mile, and that made a huge difference when they were deciding between the top two candidates. So again, completely optional. You're right. So Google's not going to read your cover letters. But if there's 500 Google applications and the top 10 have been selected, and I need to make a decision to whittle that down to 5, I'm going to go search for who, and it's a bonus if someone submitted a cover letter. Any other questions? You're just excited for the jobs, right? And the networking portion. Everyone said that they were most interested in the networking portion. It should always be 1 page long, right? Yeah, it should be 1 page long, except for like academic positions, it can be 2 pages. Could you speak more about the line hook you mentioned for the first paragraph? Yeah. So if I go back to an example of the BCG one, my favorite cover letter, their one-line hook is here. Hold on. Yeah, their one-line hook is, this is not their first paragraph. Their one-line hook is, I published in Nature Neuroscience, the highest ranked neuroscience journal with less than 8% acceptance rate. It's just interesting at that moment. It's just interesting that they mentioned that. It's impressive. And it was that hook, like they're getting them with facts and data and percentages and ranks. So that could be a hook. That's an example. The second hook would be for the Modern Languages Association. The hook was my deep-seated passion for humanities and my continuing commitment to career diversity. Because if you saw the job description, what they do, this will make sense. As well as my own unique professional trajectory, position me extremely well to succeed in this role. The hook there is making a quick connection between their experiences, their personal experiences, and how it aligns well to the needs of the role. So what the hook can be anything that's super direct and distinguishes you from candidate A and candidate B and candidate C. This FDA one doesn't have a hook. It just talks about how they have a PhD, blah, blah, blah. It would have had a hook if they immediately made the connection between how their work aligns to the work done in this division at the FDA. What's the correct location to place address? Upper right of the page, left of the page, upper left of the page. And you're placing it, you're placing their address. You don't have to put your address. So upper left. The old style used to be their address and then your address after that. You just have to write to them. What is the appropriate font size? Yeah, nothing less than 11 font would be an appropriate font size. You can do Calibri, you can do Times New Roman. I've noticed that humanities would, students and postdocs usually write in like a Times New Roman font, and then scientists use a Calibri. I think it's just a preference thing, as long as it's not some a weird, difficult to read font. Any other questions? Tyler, that one line help, one line hook, that makes sense?
So would the best one-line hook be something, you know, that's quantitative? Like the first person that was a neuroscientist, they were, you know, they used specifically, you know, that this journal has, you know, less than 8% acceptance rate. I didn't see that the person in the humanities kind of gave any quantitative facts or really listed, you know, what skills made them, you know, perfect for that job.
Yeah, so no, there's no rule that it has to be quantitative. It could be someone who really values their identity. Like, for example, me, I would immediately talk about my international student experience as my hook. If I was serving students and PhD and postdocs in this role, my immediate sell would be, I bring with me my unique identity. I'm an amalgamation of all my personal experiences. As I've been an international student as well, I feel like I can serve, you know, the international population, who's 70%, you know, of US PhDs are international. That would be my hook. I wouldn't necessarily quantify anything. I would just say my personal. I would take the humanities person's viewpoint of centering their identity. Whereas the BCG person, the reason why there's a so quantifiable in the beginning is because they were applying to BCG, big four company. They love numbers, they love deliverables. So he was intentional. Had he been writing this cover letter for maybe a research position, he may not have quantified it that much. So really, it depends on your style, what you're comfortable with. If you even have quantifiable things to say, hook is anything that distinguishes you and catches their attention. So in the humanities person, what caught the person's attention, the reader, was that this person was a fellow before in that same organization they're applying to be a staff member in. That was their hook, in addition to their identity. So it could be different. There's no hard and fast rule that you need something quantifiable.
Okay, thank you.
When submitting CV and cover letter, should I submit a PDF file or Word? Yeah. Yeah, most companies will ask for a PDF. Recently, students submitted for Tesla internships, Word documents. I converted everything into PDF for the students and sent it across. So I would say PDF is the standard, but most times it will really outdated sort of applicant portals will not read a certain type of document. That shouldn't be the case anymore. PDFs are fine, and they'll even say Word document is fine. So see what they say on their job portal. However, for this hiring event, please, I guess I forgot to mention that anywhere on the handshake jobs, but upload a PDF. It's just easier to combine PDFs when I'm sending it to them. So yeah, PDF is great. All companies couldn't do the automatic screening system with the Word, but it shouldn't be a problem anymore. They will tell you when you're on their application portal what kind of file to upload. All right, I think we're past time. I have no clue how many people even attended this. So thank you for those that stayed to ask questions. If you have any other questions, just email me. I am really slow to respond to email right now because of the hiring event, but I will get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. You're welcome. Thank you, Royce.